Caught Stealing is a 2025 American film directed by Darren Aronofsky and stars Austin Butler, Zoe Kravitz, Regina King, Liev Schreiber, and Vincent D'Onofrio. The plot follows a stuck-in-a-rut New York City bartender finding himself in the middle of a mess of drug dealers, cops, and gangsters, all stemming from pretty much just agreeing to feed his neighbor's cat while he was out of town. So Darren Aronofsky is definitely a director that I pay a lot of attention to personally. I mean, he's got a style, and I know it's not for everyone. I know that. I've seen the criticism. It's bombastic. Some might say pretentious, going back to the criticism. But one thing you can't say is that he isn't an interesting filmmaker. And that isn't to say that I haven't, that I've seen all his stuff. I watched all his early classics, more or less around the time they came out, like Pi and Requiem for a Dream. I'm still working on checking out The Fountain. I know that came out 20 years ago, I think. And also Black Swan. I've heard those are both really good. And I was a really big fan of The Whale. Oh, and I also really wanted to see Mother from back in 2017. Kind of forgot to check that one out, so I'd still need to see it. Heard some pretty mixed things, but I'm still interested. And I have zero interest in Noah. So I will admit, the trailer for Caught Stealing didn't really do a ton for me. I was kind of debating if I was even going to see this. It looked like a Guy Ritchie film, and that just isn't what I really look for from Aronofsky. That said, I'm all about a director shifting gears, and he already excels at character-driven stories, so I was curious to see what he could do with something like this. The film was based off a book of the same name, apparently, by Charlie Huston, which isn't totally new for Aronofsky, since The Whale was, I think it was a stage play adaptation. And there was Noah, also based off a fictional story. I would definitely say that it's a story that suits a movie, though, and it does have, again, a very Guy Ritchie vibe. Like an early 2000s British crime movie. Except it isn't British, and it takes place in New York City. But there is a British character in the form of Russ, played by Matt Smith. He's a random British punk guy who you could say doesn't really fit in a story like this, but it does add to the Guy Ritchie feel, and it is New York City after all. His performance, though, was fun. I mean, I want a neighbor like that. I'll feed his cat. I'll feed anyone's cats. And Russ does slide in perfectly in a character-driven, crime story like this. Because some of the other cast of characters include an intense narcotics detective, Russian mobsters, Jewish gangsters, and a Puerto Rican crime boss, I guess you could say. And this is why New York City makes for such great crime, films, in my opinion, because it's arguably the most diverse city in the world with people, from all walks of life, and it just makes for great character pieces. So when the Russian mobsters show up looking for Russ, they end up beating up Hank, Austin Butler's character, who is our lead, by the way. I probably should have said that. And they beat him pretty bad, much worse than I expected. Like, to the point of a ruptured kidney, which is a big deal for a bartender who now can't drink, like, ever, which adds a lot of depth to the film, really, and certainly, Hank's character. And I think this was the most Aronofsky aspect of the film, along with Hank's backstory, which I won't really go into, but that is what makes this more than just like your average crime film, especially since Hank is just a regular dude caught in the middle. He doesn't really know anything about Russ's personal life or anything like that. He just agreed to feed the cat. And when I say that Austin Butler is the lead here, this is almost like a vehicle for him entirely. Because this really does show his acting chops. And I ended up really liking his performance, to be honest. I wasn't really into Hank's kind of like overly masculine character at first. But I'm just like that, so personal complaint, I guess. It is a good character, brought to life by a good actor. And what makes the fairly straightforward story, albeit with some nice twists, is that Hank is, again, he's a regular guy who makes regular guy mistakes. He's not used to dealing with gangsters. Which leads to kind of your typical cat and mouse routine, and Hank wondering who exactly of all these characters can he trust? Who are the real good guys, and who are the bad guys? He has something that they want, but, who's just telling him what he wants to hear? So, As someone that does like these kinds of movies, I really overall just thought this was okay. Don't get me wrong. I mean, maybe a little better than okay. It's good. It's a good movie. And it's cool to see Darren Aronofsky do something completely different. And he is good at this. But I do have some complaints. One being, I just didn't think the story was all that interesting. The way it plays out is fine. Aronofsky shines, and so does Austin Butler again. Possibly the best I've seen him personally. And his character has a lot of development. He's memorable, and I appreciate that, but I wish that the other characters got nearly the same. They get an ethnicity, they get an accent, and a look, and I appreciate that, but I would have liked a little bit more. But because of that lack of development, I found them to be just substantially less interesting than they could have been, and that did impact my personal enjoyment of the film. I get it, we focus on Hank, but these villains needed a little bit more substance. So I'm giving Caught Stealing a solid 7 out of 10. It's good, but it could have been great, like some of Aronofsky's other films. It's also not the type of story, again, I said it earlier, but not really the type of story I want from Aronofsky, but he does make it work. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex.